everyone from the movement. And we have, of course, our followers and audience everywhere in the world. They will listen to this later on after we publish this. But today, in our meetings, we invited very important figure from Washington. Everybody knows him, Michael Bridget. He is from Hudson Institute, and he has his own company of consultant, MP Consultants Company, and he is very well known in Iraq, especially in Afghanistan. He knows a lot of us, a lot of people in Iraq. Actually, he worked with them. I believe he spent some 4 years in Iraq. I believe he can correct me later on if I am wrong, but so he knows a lot of those people they are shooting on us, and they are assume they are our buddies. I am talking about now as American, but let me go back. I talk like Iraqi. Okay, so he's shooting on American right now, all those guys. So he knows a lot of these guys, and he knows the inside of Washington. So I will let him start talking, and I will trying to interpret all that later on in Arabic, translated to Arabic. But let me give him, because the time is important for all of us. So anyway, everybody is trying to see here in our movement, and who is going to watch. They want to see to clarify Washington position, that from all those guys who are bombing our militia. Actually, I like to say the militia, bombing our facilities and our bases in Iraq, and United States bases and United States embassy, and looks like is very, like, I think it's more than 120, probably 130 attacks since just October 7. So the response is very shy, and we saw just the last week one when they killed Abu Taqwa, and we don't see. We like to see where they are going, because every Iraqi see when they see the ships, American fleets in the sea, Red Sea and Mediterranean. They think they are coming to fix everything in Middle East after the Spring or Arab Spring, after the disaster happening in all the areas there, Syria, Iraq, everywhere, actually, Libya, and everywhere. And now Iran is booming in that one. So anyway, we want this position, and I will ask him the second question, because I like him probably to talk and take his time. As they keep talking, the Iraqis, who I assume we brought them from Iraqis who are in charge right now. I assume American brought them from the streets of Damascus and Tehran, and they brought them and they put them in charge of Iraq in 2003. So I assume they are our friends. We make them governing Iraq, and they are different, should be, than Afghanistan. Afghanistan, we ran away from Biden ran away from Afghanistan, and the reason because our enemy Taliban, they never shake hands with us, and they keep fighting us for 20 years. But here in this situation, we put those guys in charge, and they are fighting us, and so we don't know they are enemies or they are friends to the United States. If they are enemies, why they have to stay there? And why we don't have to clean them up and send them to Iran back from the border, and we put the right guys in charge of Iraq, friendly of the United States. This is all what I like to say, because I took already 10 minutes from the time, so I like to leave Michael to talk as much as he wants. He has some time now, but I have to break you whenever I reach the 20 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me, Doctor. It's an honor to be here. We are at a critical point in the relationships between the United States and Iraq. Baghdad is making a very dangerous decision. Baghdad has chosen Tehran over the Iraqi people. And the Americans are now looking at Baghdad as everything that all of us in this group have said it was. It's beholden to Tehran. It listens to Tehran. It cannot stop the militias. And after these militia attacks, instead of condemning the militia attacks, the Prime Minister condemned the United States response to the Harakat Nujaba attack on the American base. So even the supporters of this government, like Michael Knights and other people like that, who can constantly say that Baghdad is an ally, they are even embarrassed to say that today, because Baghdad is not an ally. The Iraqi people are, but it's important for Washington, D.C. to understand that. You can hold Baghdad accountable while empowering the Sunni west of Iraq, while empowering the north in Iraq, while empowering the Shia youth in Iraq. And that's what the United States policy needs to be. But because Baghdad has shown itself to be so ineffective, to be so corrupt, to be so in the pocket of Tehran, the United States is now facing a question. What do we do with this relationship? And the United States is to blame. Just like Dr. Aithman said, we are responsible for what we created in Iraq, and we are responsible for what we created in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, we gave it back to the Taliban. In Iraq, we gave Iraq to Tehran, and only the Iraqi people can take it back. But it will require a relationship with the United States, meaning economic stimulus into the Sunni areas, economic stimulus into the Shia South, economic stimulus into northern Iraq, while holding Baghdad accountable. There is a task force that's set up to look at Russia, and we're going to recommend a task force be set up to look at Iraq. The Russian task force is called the Putin Oligarchs, Elites, and Proxies Task Force, and it goes after the main people tied to Putin. In this task force, it will go after the main people tied to Tehran, the people with all the money, the oligarchs equivalent in Iraq, the proxies equivalents in Iraq, the militias, and the elites that continue to be able to talk to U.S. administrations like Maliki and others, and basically put them on a list to be sanctioned and designated. It's the only way to salvage the relationship in Iraq. And I can leave it there for now.
Yeah, it looks like from whatever you present here, looks like you are planning to at least having the same task force on Russia. You make the task force on Iraq, and you following all those guys, like what you did, what you are trying to do with the Putin guys. You're trying to follow follow those guys, our guys, including even Maliki or all those guys, to the end.
The ones in Tehran, exactly. The one.
Yeah,
so in Iran, Iraq task force.
Yeah, Iraq task force. Okay, right. And but we didn't hear you if there is any other or more. I know about the task force. You told me about the task force now, but how about if there is any more strikes on those guys, like after Abu Taqwa, or we are going to continue to be shy. They hit us 100 times, and after that we say, okay, now we have to shoot one guy, middle actually. He's not a big guy. He's a small guy, I assume.
So we if you're going to target, Harakat Nujaba, you target Akram al-Kabi. If you want to target Hezbollah, you target Abu Fadak. If you want to target the IRGC force, you target Ismail Khani. These low-level people are not the ones that should decide U.S. policy. They've all been designated. They've been designated by the U.S. Treasury. They are legitimate targets for the U.S. Pentagon, and they are conducting these attacks, like you said, Doctor. Upwards of 120 attacks on American facilities inside of Iraq and Syria. And the United States has done what? One drone strike against a low-level Harakat Nujabah commander. And I would argue that strike only took place because Secretary Austin was in the hospital. And the White House didn't even know what Secretary Austin was in there for. So if any of you remember General Kurilla, who's now in charge of CENTCOM, he's a very powerful general. He's been very effective against the Taliban, the Haqqani group, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. He's a killer. I worked with him in Mosul in 2005. And when I was an advisor with the Peshmerga, and we captured the number 4 Al-Qaeda guy in Mosul, I forget the name, Hayal Wata. There you go, Hayal Wata, place there in Mosul. Kurilla is the right man to target these militias. Secretary Austin is not the right man because he's not giving permission. President Biden isn't even in charge of any of this, unfortunately. This is just me talking as a not only as a Republican, but as somebody who cares about our national security, but more important, cares about a relationship with Iraq, cares about countering Tehran, cares about keeping ISIS at bay. And the one thing about the U.S. presence in Iraq, it's there to fight Daesh, but the only threat against it is from the Hashd al-Shabi, it's from the militias. So the United States has to hit these militia leaders because deterrence is not shooting down rockets and drones. Deterrence is killing the terrorist team launching the rockets and the drones, targeting the terrorist leaders, making threats against the United States, like we saw with the Kitab Hezbollah statement, where they showed rockets with the names of American bases on it. Yeah. That's what we need to do. That's what the Iraqi people actually are begging us to do. And that's what Baghdad is so afraid of, because Baghdad cannot control the militias. The militias control Baghdad. And the people in positions of power, by design, are weak, so that they can be told what to do directly from Tehran. So we need strong Iraqis from the Sunni community, from the Kurdish community, and from the Shia community to push back. But the only way they can effectively push back without giving up is for the United States to maintain a relationship with Iraq that punishes the status quo in Baghdad.
Okay, there is 2 more questions for you. One of them is related. I like to say it in case I forget. I'm getting old. One of them is you when you came over United States, when you come over in 2003, they dismantled Iraqi army and Iraqi national security forces. Those who knows Iraq very well, who knows Iran very well. So is there any contact with those guys right now? If you have any information about that one, okay. And probably the second one is if the best way probably to support the Sunni, Kurd, and the nationalist Shia now, after the last election, you know that there is 6 million only participate out of 26 million voters or legitimate voters. So, and those 6 million are all the army, whoever they pay them the money, they came to the election. So now if we feel the movement, our movement, and the other nationalist movement, that you guarantee a good election. Good election mean fair election, controlled by international body, United Nations, or run by you. We are going to go like crazy. This is probably one way to kick all this off.
When's the next election?
I think in October next year. Okay, this is the parliament. But also that if we win the election, we like Americans, we like Washington to say, those guys, they take the power. They won the election. They don't have to negotiate with the failing peoples like Maliki and all those guys, and they give them back the power. And they find, you know what they did in 2010 when the movement, national movement won, and Alawi won, they give it back to Maliki.
Yeah.
So we need all these. But anyway, these two questions, if you can.
Yeah, really quick.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I was in the room when Obama told Odierno to take his hands off, to let Maliki stay in power, even though Iyad Allawi should have been given the opportunity to form parliament. But having said that, I'm not going to tell you what the United States can do, because we've all seen the United States not do the right thing, right? And the best thing about the elections is if they can be delayed after the U.S. presidential election, because under this president, there will not be free and fair elections in Iraq. It'll be a status quo. Under a future Republican president, they're not even paying attention. We have to make them pay attention to Iraq. And at this point, the American people, after seeing the loss in Afghanistan, are tired of these long relationships with countries. Iraq is the most successful one, you can argue. We have an embassy there. We have military forces there. We're there to fight Daesh. But the Iranian problem, we keep trying to ignore. You can't ignore it when the biggest threat against the U.S. are these militias. And the biggest force that could take on the militias are the former Iraqi army that we dismantled in 2003. And how much distrust does that organization, the former Iraqi army, have of the United States now? After 2 decades of failure and 2 decades of betrayal, abandonment, and never even asking the former military to participate, the former military to be part of the security apparatus. We didn't ask the former military to take on ISIS, because under the Obama administration, building a Sunni force was something that Iran was against. And the Obama administration was trying to secure the Iran deal. So I can't tell you what the United States will do. I can tell you what they should do. And what they should do is build a national military force that is anti-Iran, that is against Syria, meaning just to protect Iraq's sovereignty, right? That can take on external enemies and is not used against its own people. The Iraqi military is designed to put down the Sunnis in Iraq, to put down the Shia youth in Iraq, and to put down the Kurds in Iraq. It's not designed to push back against Iran. And the United States has built that. So yes, I can see the frustration in your eyes, Doctor. We know the solutions, but we don't have strong people in charge in the United States with backbone to do the difficult things that need to be done. And at this point, they're weighing leaving Iraq, and they shouldn't leave, because we need to stay to keep Iraq from falling into Iran's complete embrace. To save Iraq, we need to disfavor Baghdad. To save Iraq, we need to start that question you asked earlier. Are they friends or are they enemies? Yeah. We now see that they are, if they're friends, they're the weakest friends we could possibly have, because if Tehran tells them to do something, they're going to do it. And the United States needs to say, that is a red line. You're not a friend. If you pick Tehran, just because they have a border with you,
go with Tehran.
That's not going to work with us.
Yes.
Okay. Syria shares a border with Iraq. Saudi Arabia shares a border with Iraq. Turkey shares a border with Iraq. Jordan shares a border with Iraq. Kuwait shares a border with Iraq. Why give all the power to Tehran? Those other economies are stronger in a lot of ways than Tehran's is. And the United States needs to stop giving Tehran a seat at the table. And that's what the Bush administration did. That's what the Obama administration did. That's what the Trump administration did, unfortunately. And that's what the Biden administration basically said, you're the only ones at the table. You know, so that needs to change. And I'm very frustrated with American leadership over the last 20 years when it comes to Iraq. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything's going to be okay with a Republican president. What I'm going to tell you is that this group has the solutions for Iraq, and I agree with them, and we need to find people inside of this government that care about a stable ally in the region and not a puppet to Tehran.
Okay, I really thank you very much. I think that 20 minutes is over, and am I right? And I like to stop here and let you go, because you are really give us all the information which we are looking for from you. And I know you are committed to another meeting next couple minutes.
Absolutely.
And I will continue with my movement, and we will talk about all these bullet you said is very important. And we know that Iraqis, they have to do on their part a lot to help themselves. And we are intended to do that.
I'm happy to come back
yeah.
at any time. Anytime you need me, I'm happy to come back and talk.
Yeah, please, appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.